Let's talk about money, reputation, and the potential consequences of saying the wrong thing. Now, I'm talking about the fallout, of course, of various boycotts, the latest of which against Wix, which I dealt with in my previous video over on Black Belt Barrister. I'll link that in the description below so you can go and watch that for some more context. I will explain very briefly what happened in that situation in this video, but on this channel, a more general discussion on how these things apply. Now, just before we get into talking about the boycott itself that I'm going to talk about in this video and some of the questions that have popped up in my other video on my other channel, let's talk about money and trading in general. Now, just as background and as context, as a family, we invest and we trade in stocks. And many years ago, I did training as a stockbroker, and in fact, I traded myself for at least 2 or 3 years. And I went on to get financial qualifications, and my mother-in-law is a full-time professional stock trader and is often consulted by some of the large finance houses in China. Now, a general position with anything like this with stocks and shares, in particular with respect to public limited companies, PLCs. Obviously, the value of the company depends on the share price and the market conditions and what's happening in the news and in the market. Now, things like this, like a boycott, will, in the short term at least, impact the share price very often and certainly the sales, because a boycott will have an immediate impact on the sales of the company. It will rock stability in the marketplace, causing a drop in the share price, because if people panic sell the stock, it's going to lower the price of the shares. It's going to shake the trust and confidence in the company. So at least in the short term, that share price is going to drop. But in the long term, if this is something that the shareholders and traders believe will just blow over, i.e. in a few weeks' time, everyone will forget about this incident, the trading will ultimately go back to normal. And so this will ultimately just be a blip in the trading history of that company, put down to market fluctuations, news, or what have you. However, in some situations, and this has been particularly interesting with the Bud Light situation, because there has been a profound and a sustained boycott whereby Bud Light has been knocked off being the top selling beer and has had a serious impact on its share price and on its sales. So there are certain situations like this that the company needs to address. And if you are interested in investing, then you really should be looking into the company itself, the history of the company, how the company reacts to market trends and news and things like that. Because how a company reacts to a change in circumstances and news and events will very often predict the future of the company. And also you can look into the company's debts and all of this sort of thing. So if you are interested in this kind of discussion, I'm very interested to talk about this with you as well in a number of different ways, so let me know in the comments and hit that like button and make sure you subscribe if you want me to talk about those. And just before we move on, and following my video about having passion and a hard work ethic, if you are interested in those, I will help you to improve your household income, expenditure, and share with you exactly how we manage our budget, income, expenditure, and finances. So make sure you subscribe and let me know in the comments if you want to hear those. So now let's talk about the boycott in question. Now, of course, you'll be familiar with the Dylan Mulvaney fallout and the boycott there and what happened with the reputation for Bud Light and the what seems to be a worldwide boycott and ultimate crash of their sales. Now, there were a few comments on the previous video as to what might be done if a director is making a statement which goes against the company's best interests and causes the company to lose money. And if the company loses money as a result of a director doing something wrong, either negligently or deliberately, which could have significant consequences, which I'll go into in this video, and ultimately what that director's duties are in respect of the company and what the shareholders can do about it. So if you're not familiar with what happened in this Wix boycott just recently, It was reported that on Friday of last week, the share price dropped by over 4% because Fraser Longden made comments in an interview with Pink News that caused quite significant outrage. Essentially, he said in an interview that if customers held trans-critical views, that they were not welcome in the store and that they would probably end up having to buy their paint somewhere else. Now, just to deal briefly with what the reaction has been to that, I found online via Twitter a note that's been sent around by the media department, media and relations department by Wix. It's publicly available, so I'm going to read a bit of it to you, which seems to be Wix response to what's happened. They say in this note, as you know, Fraser Longden, our Chief Operating Officer, is a passionate supporter and advocate of the LGBTQ+ community. Fair enough, many people are. But whether they express those views on behalf of a company, on the other hand, obviously may be met with different consequences, as has been seen with many companies that have gone to such extremes. I'll talk about why they might do that in a moment. But this note goes on. Recently, Fraser spoke at the Pink News Trans Summit where he spoke about Wix support of trans and non-binary community. Some of his comments were taken out of context and shared on Twitter, which has sparked a lot of interest and led to Wix trending on Twitter with the hashtag Boycott Wix. And then goes on to provide some guidance as to what to say in response to all that. I might come back to that in a moment. But just taking that little bit snippet for a moment, it says some of his comments were taken out of context. I respectfully disagree with that because, in fact, many people that are quoting it are doing just that. They are quoting it verbatim, as I did on my channel, because I felt that it was my Black Belt barrister channel, because I felt that it was such a critical statement to have made, which has obviously upset a lot of people for various reasons, that I would play that interview portion to you in which those comments were made. So if you didn't agree with my view, you can hear it for yourself and you can make up your own mind what you thought about those comments. And in fact, there's been quite a lot of people quoting this, such as Sharon Davies, MBE Olympic swimmer, who on Twitter said, "So Wix thinks anyone in the UK that thinks biological females deserve fair and safe support is a bigot. That's an awful lot of mums, dads, grandparents, brothers, and of course females who'll be taking their bigoted business elsewhere." Now, of course, that is a different phrase than the one Fraser Longden used, but it's obviously a subjective phraseology of a trans-critical view to say that anyone that holds those views is not welcome in the store and is a bigot and so on. So that's how the phrase has been taken. But then some of the questions come up as to what shareholders might be able to do if directors have acted in a way that's caused loss to the company. Now, this is a very complex area of law, and the bottom line is a director must act in the best interests of the company. And that is contained within the Companies Act of 2006, Section 172. Now, there's also been some comments that I've seen online that directors making comments like this will have bought or sold shares and then made the comment with a view to make a gain. Now, of course, there are many, many rules that will prevent that from happening. Not least of which there are rules on insider trading. These were contained within the Model Code, which has now been replaced by the Market Abuse Regulations of 2016, which prohibits directors of a listed company from dealing in securities of the company on the basis of inside information. And there are also disclosure requirements where directors must notify the company in writing of all transactions and so on. And there are periods of closed trading whereby they cannot conduct any transactions of their own for a period of 30 calendar days before the announcement of interim financial reports and so on. All of these, of course, will make hard records of trading and so on. So if there was a statement that was made that causes a huge crash in stock, then anyone accusing the director of such things could go back and see whether that director has made trades. And of course, I don't think that will be the case with this current boycott, or any of the boycotts for that matter. I just don't think that will be the case. That's not to say it doesn't happen. Of course, it does happen, and directors are prosecuted, and They are held to account for any trades they've made. If they've made a statement knowing that it's likely to cause a loss in the share price and they've shorted the market, and if there are any allegations against the director, then of course these records would support such a complaint. As for shareholder actions and what shareholders might be able to do, if there's any suspicion of wrongdoing by shareholders, then they can of course report this to the Financial Conduct Authority, or they can consider taking legal action against the director for breach of a duty. I don't think that's the case here. I think it was probably a poor choice of words. Was it taken out of context? I don't think it's really, from what I've seen, been taken out of context. I've not seen everything, obviously. Some tweets might have taken it out of context, but the ones that I've seen are a subjective reaction to those comments and feelings expressed by way of a tweet. But what if, secondly, a director does or says something that could cause a stock crash? Well, directors have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interests of the company. As I said, that's contained within the Companies Act. And shareholders could argue that if they do something that causes a significant drop in share price, shareholders could consider bringing what's known as a derivative claim against the director of a company, but this is subject to approval of the court. And that would be arguing that the director has breached their duty under Section 172 of the Act, or failed to exercise reasonable care and skill or due diligence under Section 174. And as I said, this is a very complex type of claim. It's a very difficult area. But what do I think more generally, now that I've given you a legal overview? Not that this was supposed to be the legal channel, it's not. That's supposed to be reserved for Black Belt Barrister. But nonetheless, I can't help myself. What do I think generally about companies doing this? Well, I think it comes down to a couple of different things, and I think it's where those things clash. I think on the one hand, there are people within an organization that want to express their personal views by exercising their position and authority within a company. So they guide and direct the company to support various causes, be that wildlife or be that Pride Month, whatever that might be. And when those decisions and expressions of those interests and personal views clash, in a sense, with a section of the market by the way that they're expressed, it can obviously have a monetary detrimental effect to the company. Another reason for supporting such things would be a purely commercial aspect, where the company decides that it is better to take a stance of inclusivity and supportiveness of the general community at large and as a whole. But there again, it still depends on how that is expressed. Because if it's expressed to a degree that alienates a large chunk of the community, and of that community will include customers, many of whom are going to boycott the company if they feel that they are being ousted or ostracized in any kind of sense, as many people clearly did from the views expressed by Fraser Longden in that interview. I think that is probably the wrong way to go about it, because I do believe that a company can be supportive of any kind of initiative, be it Pride Month or be it any kind of wildlife initiative or any social agenda around the world. I think they can do that without alienating any one section of the society. Because I think you would probably agree, you may not, and you're welcome to disagree, but so let me know in the comments what you think. But I'm sure that you would probably agree that if a company said, we support this section of the community, whichever section it is talking about at that specific moment in time, in this case with Wix, obviously in respect of Pride Month, I'm sure you will probably agree that if the company said, we support this section of the community, and leave it at that, then you'd probably not take an issue with it. At least I think a good many of you would not take an issue with it. But I do then think that if the company goes further and says, if you don't agree with that, you're not welcome, which is how this interview has been taken by many, by Fraser Longden. If you don't agree with our initiative, you're not welcome. Then obviously quite rightly, I think you're going to take offence by that. If that's what you understand that phrase to mean, then I think you're justified in taking offence. But you still may support the community at the same time as taking offence by the statement. So that I don't think they are mutually exclusive. I think you can still, in your heart, support the Pride community and take offence by those comments. That's just my thought process. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Do you feel that you can have both of those feelings at the same time? Can you be both supportive of a group and offended by someone who is trying to support that group? This is where I think those companies are falling foul in their attempt to support a community. I think in the attempt to support a community, they are alienating a lot of the rest of community, even if it's people that do support the community but are offended by the statements made. These are just my thoughts as they come out. This version isn't planned. This is just me thinking about it and how I think some of these companies get it wrong. And I think if a company were to take the stance to say, you know what, we regret saying that, we understand how it upsets you, as in anyone that was offended by it, we understand and we regret saying it and take an action against it in some way or another. I think that would hold a lot of sway with a lot of people. That's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. But in the meantime, I do enjoy exploring these thoughts and responding to some of the comments and trying to bring them all together in a slightly less legalese video. But either way, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe for much, much more. And as always, I thank you for watching.